flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the finance director please call roll since our recorder is missing? She's excused absence.
Mayor DeCola.
Present.
Council President Steinhebel.
Here.
Councilor Conti.
Here.
Councilor Mann. Councilor Salvage. Councilor McLean.
Here.
Councilor Workman.
Here.
Thank you so much. We'll move into consent calendar. Following, let me get my mouth going right here. So following items are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussions on these items unless a councilor so requests. In that case, the item will be removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. Agenda, Lebanon City Council agenda, September 24th, 2025. Council meetings, 2025-0910, City Council regular meeting and work session meeting. And grant submittal, DLCD, Technical Assistance Grant. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion's been moved to approve. It's been second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, next up, presentation. We got Maria Bowers, Benton Clean and Strong. Please come forward. Are you going to speak too?
I'll just be here in case you need me.
Well, you can come up if you choose.
Come on up. Hi.
I just, sometimes they'll write me notes on my thing here and they'll have one name and that'll happen. Anyhow.
Hi.
Please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for having us. Speaking of notes, I'm not Marie Bowers. Marie Bowers is out planting because she's a fifth-generation seed farmer who is very busy. She's in a tractor right now. She couldn't be here. So my name's Annie Ellison. I'm from the coalition we're going to talk to you about today, Benton Clean and Strong. This is my colleague, Councilor Elise Garnell. You can say hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
From the great city of Newburgh.
Yep.
So thank you for having us. Let me see, does this, yes, okay. So who are we? Oh, Jesus, sorry. Okay. No, you're good, okay. So you probably heard a little bit about the Coffin Butte landfill expansion. You've probably heard a lot from opponents. We are a coalition of, working people, residents, business owners who do support the expansion, which we're going to talk a little bit more about. It is the last parcel, the expansion we're talking about in this application is the last parcel that was designated landfill in the year 1997 when I was 10. That's the expansion we're talking about. So it is a modest expansion. It's different from the 2021 expansion, which was much bigger, involved Coffin Butte Road. And so what we're talking about is a conditional use permit to develop that last parcel. So we share a commitment to protecting the county's quality of life, supporting local jobs. There's a lot of ways. I know it's in Benton County, but it does impact your community, this community, and we'll talk a little bit about why. So yeah, just setting the table with some facts. Things you maybe like, mundane facts that impact our day-to-day lives that aren't as exciting for, or organized opposition to talk about. The methane that comes off that landfill goes into generators and it goes into the grid and powers 4,000 homes every year. The rest of that methane is burned off. It is actually one of the region's biggest contributors to clean energy. I know it's you don't always think that way, but that is a big part of what happens at Coffin Butte. Planning ahead, so this expansion, this modest expansion, gives time as we, develop a regional waste management solution for the entire Willamette Valley. You probably know there's a task force coming together under some legislation. I'm sure, Lynn County or somebody here is tracking it, but the cost of disposal, if you're not thinking about the cost of disposal, you're not thinking about what happens to it, they're doing a great job, right? The cost of disposal impacts everything from whether it's construction, school districts, you name it, right? And it's the bigger the the bigger a part of your budget it is, the more that an increase in those costs would impact you. We're obviously at a time where you all probably are hearing that cost of living is the biggest concern for your constituents. At least, that's what our data shows, that, what's the biggest issue affecting you right now? Cost of living. And those are costs that, get passed on to people, they get passed on to ratepayers, et cetera. So expanding Coffin Butte, this modest expansion keeps that local waste locally, and instead of having to send it elsewhere, which is sort of the alternative. So when, in the event that Coffin Butte, the alternative to Coffin Butte is a lot of emissions, right? It's a lot of, if it's going somewhere else, it's not generating that revenue for local communities. The landfill generates, I think, $11 million per biennium for Benton County in discretionary funds. Obviously, you guys are Lynn County, but these are all communities that interact together. So stable, predictable service for Benton County residents and consumers. Like long distance hauling is not a cost saving thing. I think, and there's a lot of TBD of where that waste would go. About 100 people, these are really good family wage jobs of people that work at Coffin Butte. They live everywhere from Monmouth Independence to Lebanon to, Benton County, Lynn County. And then there has been a lot of probably of what you've heard about the landfill is, there's been a lot of talk about the environmental stuff, right? This is a highly regulated facility, really strict federal, state, and local reporting guidelines. They meet and exceed those at most intervals. They have triple the amount of methane monitoring that is required. They have 38 ground wells on that site that they test for 60 chemicals, and that water in the ground wells meets safe drinking standards. So I know, people get very concerned when they hear about things like leachate and methane, and it's like, I straight up asked the guys at the landfill, I was like, could I drink that water? And they were like, go for it. So, or not, they didn't say go, they were like, you could safely drink it. I don't know, it's up to you, free country, right? So that there is a lot of that future energy work that's happening there. I think people think in their mind of what a landfill is. It is like a beehive of engineering. If any of you have ever been out there for a tour, and if you haven't, I can help you. And then, additionally, this kind of the fees generated from the franchise fees and the tip fees, Benton County residents pay less. We out of countyers pay more, but it is the second largest source of revenue for Benton County. Public safety, roads, all those good things. It's discretionary funds. They spend it however they want. All right, so this is kind of just the summary of kind of the facts, because, there's a lot, organized special interest groups have a lot of time and resources to communicate with elected leaders like you all. And it is important to us that, folks who don't necessarily have those time and those resources, but will be impacted by this decision, this is why we have this coalition coming together to provide a voice. So as we zip through this, what does Benton County think? We did a poll, yay, in a recent survey. So again, despite, the very loud, sound does not always equal fury, is maybe the one thing I've taken away from this effort, is that, when in a scientific poll conducted by DHM Research, which is a very reputable pollster, back in July, 62% of people in Benton County said they agreed with the expansion. So renewable energy, keeping costs low, and community investment were the reason. I think something like 2% of people said Coffin Butte was the biggest thing impacting their life, right? And I would assume that entire 2% has made their voice heard. So we just want to make sure, we're sharing this information with you. We are coming together. We have a coalition. We have, it's a broad, we have elected Democrats in Corvallis, like Councilor Napak, who was like peeling paper off of soup cans in the 1960s to recycle them, but she's deeply passionate. She remembers a time when people were just dumping in the Marys River and doesn't want to go back to that. We have folks like Mayor Alex Johnson, the second, of Albany, or Albany, who, he wants to grow the local economy. He's very sensitive to his ratepayers. He's listening to his people. He's supportive of the expansion for the sheer reason of those costs to families. You've got folks like Marie who couldn't be there, but she sent us her quote. It's for farmers. It's about planning ahead and keeping that control local. And then we've got people who are been on solid waste experts for years, and that it's a modest expansion is a responsible path forward. A lot of people talk about that local control. And, Councilor Napak said the consequence for not expanding would be a much bigger problem than the negatives that the expansion would bring. Maybe you guys know Zach Dahl. It's about costs because they serve small businesses. It all goes down the chain. This is a list of folks who've joined the coalition so far. And we didn't have all the time and space for 1,700 names. But, we've got a growing list of people who are coming together in support. Everyone from, hotel owners, business owners, haulers, towers, and just so folks know why it matters now, things are happening in about a month as of yesterday. There will be hearings that the appeal will be heard by the Benton County Commissioners. So the staff in Benton County recommended approving the conditional use permit, the professional staff that we entrust to, run our jurisdictions. They said, yes, meets code, approve the permit. The Planning Commission voted against it. So Republic Services appealed, coalition came together, and that's what this hearing is. It's the 3 Benton County Commissioners are going to hear the appeal from Republic Services, and that's where we're bringing people together to make sure their voices are heard. Again, special interests, organized opposition in Eugene, they've got a lot more time and resources than average people who are like, I don't want my costs to go up. So that's why we're here in front of you today. They will be voting on this appeal, those 3 Benton County Commissioners. We want to make sure you have the best information. This is sort of the sequence of how it's going to go. The hearings are going to be at the Benton County Fairgrounds, which is new for me. Typically, you do hearings somewhere like this. But the 15th, if you are motivated to join the coalition and you are motivated to, speak up for, keeping costs down here in Lebanon, we'd encourage you to sign up. We'd encourage you to testify. I think, these Benton County Commissioners, again, they're hearing so much from opposition when, by and large, people support the expansion. And then, these are the ways you can get involved. You can join the coalition. You can tell your friends and neighbors. You can, call your colleagues in Benton County. All politics is local. Or submit written testimony at or before the hearing. The other thing you can do is if you are moved and you're feeling like this is going to impact Lebanon, you can pass a resolution if you want. Obviously, probably not at a work session, depending on your charter, right? But so your all's voice matters. We want you to have the best information, and we would encourage you to join the coalition if you're moved to. And any questions that you have, we're here to take them. If they're kind of landfill specific, Republic specific, we'll probably get back to you. But people have a lot of questions about this because there's so much mythology about this landfill that we're just here to kind of help people just kind of get the basics of what's happening. So I will cease talking and let you guys, if you have any questions for us.
Did you have anything?
I'm happy to help answer questions.
Okay.
But go ahead.
All righty. I guess my first question, you brought up a good term, a cost of living. Has anybody did an analysis on what the increase to the ratepayer is going to be?
So this answer, they told me to prepare for this question, and that's kind of a public services question. You have a contract for rates and stuff with Republic. A lot of that stuff is proprietary. We can't say for sure, right? We can't say for sure how much things are going to cost because what increase would be, because do we know where it's going? Do we know how it's getting there? What's the cost of fuel? What's the cost of labor? I would think it's not going to be the same, and it's not going to be less. I know this is not a satisfactory answer, but one comparison we can make is, so the leachate that gets sent to the city of Corvallis from Coffin Butte, I think they pay like 11 cents a gallon. Corvallis doesn't want it anymore, fine. They're going to send it to, I think it's Idaho, or we don't know yet, right? Idaho, Eastern Oregon, somewhere like that. It's going to be like more in the 90 cents a gallon range. And this is something that for public services, when your colleagues at the Philomath City Council ask this question, that's where public services sit. So that's kind of a benchmark, like a couple markers of like, what does transport mean? But we can't say for sure. That stuff's proprietary. It's all very, that's also part of why it's so hard to talk about this, right? It's like, well, how much is it going to go up by? And we're like, well, factors A through R depends, right? But it's not going to go down for sure. If that makes sense. But I'll bring it to our colleagues over there and just say, hey, anything you can give Lebanon about what? Or you mean specifically on the ratepayer or specifically on the city?
On the ratepayer.
Okay, yeah, we can.
Because we all know that if it can't go to that location, it's going, of course, go to a different location, which is probably going to be far away. And of course, you just mentioned all the inputs of production right there with fuel, labor, the requirements of trucking it, all that kind of stuff. So, that.
And again, we're here for the coalition. I think this is a Republic question, so let me have our colleagues at Republic get you something.
Do you know where the possible locations are?
I would think, yeah, and again, it's like so much TBD. My guess would be people would look towards places like Arlington, which, is also getting all the dredging from the Columbia or from the Willamette Superfund site, right? So it's like, I don't know, TBD, but those are options, right? There's 2 landfills in Western Oregon. One is in Goshen, run by Lane County. One is Coffin Butte.
Okay. It looked like you had a question.
Sure. I guess, can you help me understand your relationship with Republic Services? Because I see on your website, the logo is prominently displayed.
Yep.
So I'd like a little more information on that. Also, I'm going to, maybe this is my assumption, an expansion of Coffin Butte will cost the taxpayers or the ratepayers money, right? Because you're going to expand it, and
That's my understanding would be no, but I think this is a Republic question. So what I can say about the coalition is the coalition is separate. They make it very clear on the website. It's paid for by Republic Services, not with ratepayer funds. So it is a community group of people that have come together to have their voices heard about how the landfill expansion would impact them. So yes, it's paid. We're very clear that it's paid for by Republic Services. We work alongside them, but we're different things.
and so you're contracted with Republic Services.
The coalition is separate from Republic Services.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
And then
It's still murky, but yeah.
Your question was?
It was pretty much that. I was just kind of wanting to understand that relationship because obviously it's in Republic Services' interest to extend the life of Coffin Butte as it is in the ratepayers. But my guess is that, again, an expansion of a landfill will cost a company money, but so will trucking it. I would imagine that would cost more money. So I think it's like, for me, it's the lesser of two.
My understanding, and again, this is a Republic, my understanding is like they're building cells like all the time, right? Like if you go up there, and truly, if you haven't, you should. They're building new cells, they're lining new areas, they're moving things around all the time, right? This conditional use permit is happening because it's on the other side of Coffin Butte Road, right? This parcel that's designated landfill since 1987 requires the conditional use permit. So I actually, your assumption about that cost would go up if the expansion happens, let me double check, but I don't think so.
Well, that would be great if they would extend the life of it without passing that down to the ratepayers.
I believe that's
Yeah.
the whole plan. I mean, I think there's set rate, you guys have contracts that people that
Sure.
are far more expert in
I would love
that
when
than-
Julie comes back for that not to be a factor in her speech is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, the landfill
Yes.
expansion? Yeah, well, this is why
Yeah.
this is why we keep it separate. So the
Sure.
rates that you have and the rate increases that happen, like as part of your agreements with Republic, that's totally separate from this.
Okay, thank you.
I had a couple questions. You're Annie Ellison, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what is your name?
Elise Yarnell.
What?
Elise
Elise
Yarnell, yeah.
Yarborough?
You're now.
Yarnell. It's Yarnell, Yarnell.
Oh, okay. How many acres does Coffin Butte encompass?
Let me see now. Let me double check. Why do, I think it's like 178 or something, but I can look.
And their expansion would be how many more acres?
So there is a page on Republic's, there is a Coffin Butte expansion page with like all these details about the conditional use permit. There's like link after link after link. Hold on, if you want, I can pull it up.
Sure.
Okay, hold on.
Sure.
Let's keep going on that. I just want to make sure I'm telling you the right things off the top. So yeah, it's the Coffin Butte landfill expansion, like there's all the information about the application for the conditional use permit. And you could find it all there. I could misspeak, or we can just look at it. Hold on. Do you ask just because kind of compared
Well,
to?
I'm just curious, if, let's say it's 170 acres, have they already purchased the land? Do they
Oh,
already
yeah.
own the land?
They
for the
own it. It's
expansion?
zoned landfill since the year of our Lord, 1987. Yeah, so it is the last parcel of that, if that makes sense. And the reason they're going through this process is because there's a road.
And so what are the biggest issues of the opposition? Is it water leaching into their wells or?
I don't want to speak for them, but there was a lot of testimony given to the board. I think it's, it runs the gamut. But yeah, I don't want to speak for the opposition.
I think it goes beyond a partisan issue. I'm in favor of the expansion personally myself, and you can add me to the list of it.
Excellent, Councilor
That's how I feel
McLean.
about it.
Don't get you signed up.
It's very convenient to be able to load stuff up and use that landfill over there. I use it sometimes once, twice a week. I'm familiar with its outlay and all that stuff and how far back it goes. It would be really inconvenient to have to haul stuff up to Arlington or down to Goshen instead of just running over to Coffee.
And again, we don't know, like, it's all like a TBD, but it's like there's a finite amount of space in the landfill if the life of the landfill is not expanded, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think what Ken brought up, the cost, and Alex, the mayor of Albany, also brought up that issue too. I think those are big things. But I think it's just common sense, just to go ahead and expand that landfill. We're going to dump our garbage somewhere. It's going to be in Corvallis, or it's going to be up the Columbia River, which is going to get back down to us eventually anyway. So, I think that it could be more controlled if it was over there in Corvallis.
Sorry, Elise is faster than I am on the internet, but yeah, it is just coffinbuttelandfill.com/2024-cup. And that is like everything you possibly want to know. But Counselor Holloman or Yarnell?
States it's 740 acres.
And the expansion is, the whole thing is 740.
There you go.
There you go.
I can visualize that. That was the size of my farm.
No.
The 70 acres?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, what are you here asking for today? What do you want from us? Do you want something as a body or individually, or, we're kind of curious.
Yes. Yeah, both and. I think we just wanted to make sure you're getting information from the sort of quieter majority of folks who are impacted by this. Number two, obviously to ask for your support as a body. to submit, all the things, depending on what you all decide to do. Ask for your support as individuals. Yeah.
My curiosity in this, just to be honest, is if everybody is for this, counselors are, everybody thinks, who's fighting it? What was the objection from the planning commission that said, no, we're not going to give this permit? And it feels like you might not know that answer, but I'd like
Oh,
to
I know
the
the answer. I would say, there's a really well-organized group out of Eugene called Beyond Toxics. And there's really well-organized group of kind of environmental interests that have, they submitted a lot of testimony about a lot of things.
At some point, and I'm just common sense here. At some point, that stuff's going to have to go someplace. Why would an environmental group say, no, we don't want to put it right there where it lands. We want to take it someplace else?
Right, why they don't want to put it in a safe lined cell with 6 feet of crush and 3 times as many pipes as are required, I do not know. You'd have to ask them. But
Common sense tells you if they're gonna truck this and rail it and do all that stuff to somewhere else or whatever, that's a lot of pollution going into the air just from all the
Exactly.
trucking and the railway. and
All the
that
trucks will
stuff.
be electric.
What's that?
right.
Oh, yeah.
And I was going to ask that, you power
out of my
4,000
way.
homes with the methane, but you burn some off. Is there a capacity to power more homes by harnessing that methane? Just
That
need a
is
bigger
like
plant or something?
100% a Republic question, but like, I would think so. I would think more methane harnessed equals more powering of more homes. There's a, they work with a renewable energy group but we can get back to you, Councilor Workman, about that. So you just want to know what is the potential for
Because
methane
I worked
to
at a
energy?
garbage dump when I was back in the 20s, not quite that long ago, but we just burned it off in a big, and it should have been harnessed. It smelled terrible out there. But if that gas is there and available, it should be being used well. Just might be.
Yeah.
Well, it's not like we can go back to using burn barrels.
Yeah.
That was the old way of doing things. Now we have to take everything to a landfill, so let's just make it easy on ourselves.
We can.
Right, well, yeah, there are people in the coalition who say,
I'm gonna go home and light my
they
burn barrel up
illegal
tonight.
dumping is like, waste is not safe, waste is safe in a lined cell, right? It's not safe, just illegally dumped somewhere, right? It gets rained on, bad things happen. Yeah, that has been a concern, and definitely people who've grown up in this region, and they're like, I remember when we used to people used to just dump it, let's not go back to that.
But what I really appreciate about this landfill is you can take anything there. I mean, just about anything. I taken old boats, and you can pull a travel trailer up there, and they'll crunch it up and just blend it in with their stuff. So, I mean, when it comes to things like that, what would people do if they didn't have Coffin Butte? Where would they take that kind of stuff, and how would they dispose of
Right.
mattresses? You take a mattress up to
Tires.
Sweet Home, it's $40. You take it over to Coffin Butte, it goes into the rest of the garbage, and it's $70 a ton, which that mattress is going to run you about $1 to get rid of. So, I mean, that's the difference of trucking, because everything in Sweet Home has to be trucked out. So if anybody wants to do any comparison on prices, take your stuff up to Sweet Home and pay, $40 for a mattress, or over to Coffin Butte and pay $1. So there,
It's a reasonable
things like that make a
resource.
lot of difference
Yeah.
to contractors and homeowners and people out here, that are trying to get rid of their stuff. The only other thing that I'm thinking about here is, if Coffin Butte isn't available to take all this stuff, tires and mattresses and things like that, it's all going to wind up in a county ditch somewhere. If people don't have a place to take that stuff, they're going to get rid of it, and it's not going to be in Arlington or Goshen. It's going to be in a county ditch somewhere. So as far as helping keep our county clean and protecting our environment, I think that keeping Coffin Butte operating and expanding would be the common sense way to go. Now, I've been around the planning commission over there in Corvallis, so I kind of understand what they are up against. They're a different group of people.
Yeah.
They have different views on stuff. And
If
I'm not
you
saying
have
that
35
I'm not
hours
saying they're
to
completely
watch the
wrong.
testimony, by all means, or maybe, while you're running or whatever. Yeah, you can get a,
Well, I'm not saying they're completely wrong or absurd, because without that difference of opinion that they provide sometimes, I mean, things might get out of hand if
Yeah.
the pendulum swings too far in one direction.
Yeah.
So,
it sounds like we'll get back to Counselor, Mayor, Counselor, with your, just to close the loop on all those questions. That website I mentioned, it's coffinbuttelandfill.com/2024-cup is like, if you want to just like pour through everything, it is all there. There's a wildlife habitat assessment, application, it goes on and on and on and on. Yeah, thank you for having us. So do you,
Thanks for coming.
yeah, if you so decide to do a resolution, Mr. Whitlatch, is that something you could?
That'd be up to the council. What's the council's preference on this?
Well, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Okay.
I'd like
Thank
to
you.
know more before, I'm just being honest, I'd like to know more before. I
Absolutely.
commit.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Have a good one.
Okay, we'll move into the next section, public comment. I don't see much of the public here, so we'll dispense with that segment. Items from council. Nothing?
Not for me.
All righty. Okay, we'll go to public and press comments. I don't see the public or the press here, so we'll dispense with that one. Next scheduled council meeting will be October 8th, 2026. Right after adjournment of this meeting, we'll move right into a work session unless anybody needs a break. Okay, okay. So this meeting is adjourned at 12:32. Let's move right into work session and call this meeting to order. And discussion items today are solar discussions. Director Hart.
Good afternoon, everybody. So before us today, we're going to talk about solar. As my
Good day
last
for it.
presentation before y'all.
Oh,
I guess. So as a quick recap, this is our third conversation about solar projects for you all. The topic was originally brought forth as an idea by the mayor as an opportunity for us to do something different, to try to bring some value back to our community. This is to specifically try to address the fact that right now we are paying over $900,000 annually in our Pacific Power electricity bills. It's important to note that we have two electricity providers in our community. So you have CPI and Pacific Power. The city does have accounts with both. For CPI, I think we have maybe 2 parks and streetlights with them, and the vast majority of our facilities are under Pacific Power. And so as we've been looking at this, it has really only been an analysis of Pacific Power's accounts to try to offset. But all of the information that we've been evaluating can easily be mirrored over to CPI as well. And so really the big reason why we're looking at this is obviously, almost $1 million annually is a big chunk of change to pay for electricity costs. And, it's 57% rate increases over the last 4 years, as you can see from Pacific Power, is a big set of increases. I believe this last year they were proposing another 17% rate hike, but they were only approved for a 9.8% increase. So, just as a way to think about it as well, if you just go on a basic escalator of 3% increase for general inflationary increases, if you think about that, in 20 years, the city would be paying $1.75 million for electricity with Pacific Power if we were to continue on paying for electricity with them. So looking at solar is an alternative for us to think about something differently. So with these rate increases, solar is a possible solution. If we were to implement this, the use of solar would be a cost stabilization. It would be a long-term opportunity for us to maintain a rate at a lower level, which would allow for us to have a stabilized budget option and reduce uncertainty in our budgeting process. And also, hey, it happens to be one of those state goals and environmental objectives. So it also helps us in terms of looking good at the state level as well. So as we have been looking at this project, we started trying to actually put some numbers to the situation and putting actual projects together for you all to evaluate. So I wanted to actually put some information together for you guys to have in terms of how we started putting the calculations together. So we identified that it costs about $2.64 per watt right now for construction of a solar project in the Willamette Valley. And in terms of actual production of solar value in our area, you get about 4.5 hours per day on average. That's across the entire year. Obviously, during the summer, you get more hours per day. During the winter, you get less. But overall, you get about 4.5 hours per day of peak sunlight to produce solar energy. What this generally means is for areas like ours, we have to end up having more solar panels to produce the same energy than if you were someplace that was sunnier for a longer period of time to get the same output, basically. And so when we were also doing calculations in terms of panel size, we identified the panel size as a 400 watt panel size. So this is the same size that you would find as this is kind of the old standard size. It is a residential size panel. It is an old commercial size panel. There are larger commercial size panels that you can find now, like a 440 watt or a 500 watt panel size. But I utilize this smaller size to sort of identify what the maximum land area you would need to be able to create different projects to sort of identify whether or not we would be able to get the appropriate yield out of this. And then in terms of the panels themselves and the life expectancy, what you're seeing in the industry is about a 20 to 25 year warranty on the systems and the panels. And that is important to know in terms of if we're going to propose financing the projects. But in terms of life expectancy of the systems themselves, if they're maintained appropriately, you can extend that out to a 30 to 40 year life expectancy. So once you actually finish the financing, you're going to get an extended yield and value out of the project itself. But it's also important to note that as these systems age, their efficiency does start to wane a little bit. But they're still highly efficient, and technology continues to be incredibly efficient. So as they continue to age, you're going to lose that efficiency, and so you will eventually start to see a little bit of a power bill come back onto your books as well. So basic information there. So that helped us get into the calculations. Also, as we were looking at trying to develop projects, we were identifying the types of grants that are available. There are a ton of different grants that are available out there. The grant view is always changing and ever changing in this field. And so I have identified sort of the stable grants that are out there right now. That are annual or always available. And so you could potentially add on more to this, but this is going to be your bread and butter, what is always going to be there. And so there are 4 basic ones. You have the Community Resilience and Energy Production Grants, so CREP. And under that, there are 2 grants. So you have the Planning Grant, which will be available for you guys as part of the introduction, the planning and engineering side where you're designing whatever plan you're putting together. And that is a $100,000 grant that does not require a match, so it can go up to 100% of the project. Or there is the construction grant, which is up to $1 million, and that does require a 50% match. Next up is Pacific Power does have rebates available, and they do have a cap to those rebates, which is $20,000. And then once you administer those grants, you do have the federal tax credit, which is the 30% tax credit. And so once you take off those grants that would be administered, the net of what's left, you would do the 30% tax credit, which is your largest grant that you'll have available to take 30% off the net cost. So that is actually a decent grant that would be available to assist. So from there, we started creating some potential projects that would be available based off of the potential offsets, total costs, and potential city contributions to it. So there is the potential for a full consolidated project, which would create a 100% offset of all of Pacific Power's utility costs. And that project can be produced at the wastewater treatment plant. This does take up pretty much all of the available land that is out at the wastewater treatment plant that isn't needed for the expansion. And it might potentially bleed in a little bit over across the street of Tennessee Road, depending on how much land is available and needed for the expansion of the wastewater treatment plant. There's also the water treatment plant that's available, or the wastewater treatment plant project alone that you can do. Both of those projects are too large to do as a behind the meter project or a net meter project, which means that you would have to do it as what's called a power purchase agreement with Pacific Power, where you negotiate how much Pacific Power is going to be willing to purchase that power from you and exchange it for the cost, basically. The other projects are where you would build the systems actually at those different facilities, whether it's at the water treatment plant, the water intake, which is actually in county, so you'd have to apply for a conditional use permit at that site. Or at the Justice Center, sort of in that little excess area, so by the skate park. For the last two, they do not have enough land area to fully offset the costs associated with those two sites. That would be a behind the meter project. I identified the Justice Center as a partial offset. We actually do have the exact number. That would be only a 27% offset of the utility costs because of the size of the land area, because it's a ground mounted project. The Justice Center's roof right now is, I believe, a 20-year roof. So when you do go about re-roofing the Justice Center eventually, that's another 0.35 of an acre when you take off the area that's required for all of the AC units and everything, and the walking area paths and everything. That would also be available if you wanted to do a roof-mounted system as well. And if you did that, you could get up to about a 47% offset of utility costs for the Justice Center as a behind-the-meter project as well. So as you can see in here, you have the total costs anticipated for each of these projects. And then with the grants that were identified on the previous page, what the city's contributions would be. So I wanted to show you sort of what we have looked at as an in-depth evaluation of one of the projects, and then you can take this and do it for each of the different projects, or how you would do it for any sort of mix of what you wanted to look at. So this is for if you were to do a full offset of all of the city's utilities at the wastewater treatment plant. So it's a total of a 5.6 megawatt project. The total anticipated cost of it would be $6.45 million. And the city's contribution would be 10.73 million after you do those 3 grant offsets. The total land required for that would be about 28 acres. And that is again with the 400-watt panels. You could engineer that down to a smaller footprint if you use the larger panel size. And again, the grant contributions are identified below on this slide. Obviously, the city does not have $10.73 million of capital laying around. So we have identified a couple of different financing options that would be available. You have traditional bond sale or loan options, which the city can do to finance the upfront costs. You have an interfund city loan process, which for some of those smaller projects could potentially work. For the larger projects, it would not work because it has a 10-year limit to it, and some of these larger projects would have 16 to 20-year terms, and that would not be feasible. The other option is an actual program that is designed for energy financing, which is called a CPACE program. So it's CPACE financing, and this is a program that would have to be established through the county and through the city. And it would finance 100% of the upfront capital costs specifically for energy production, so for solar. And then it would actually be identified as a tax assessment on the property in which the solar is being produced on. And it would be basically specifically for commercial, industrial, or multifamily properties at that point. So you would actually be creating this opportunity for the city itself, because we would be identifying the properties that we would be putting it on, like the wastewater treatment plant, as an industrial property. But then by creating this program for us, you're also opening up this avenue for your commercial, industrial, and multifamily properties to also have this program available for them to have the ability to finance these upfront costs and put it as a tax assessment on their properties as well. And what that does is it takes it to a property assessment rather than a personal loan for them to be able to do these types of improvements on the property. So that is a financing option as well. And interest rates are looking a lot better. Just last week, the Fed did drop the basis points by another 25 points. So we're looking at a better interest rate at about 5% at this point. So what that looks like for the consolidated project, we ran some of the numbers through a loan calculator. If you did 10.7 million over a 20-year loan at an interest rate of 5%, I'm assuming conservatively, Brandon does say we could get a lower interest rate, but I did a little conservative, more conservative. That would be a quarterly payment of just over $200,000 or an annual payment of $845,000. And if you remember, we're already paying more than that in our current utility bill. And so our loan for offsetting 100% of our utilities with getting solar would be less than our current utility bill as it sits right now to pay nothing in our utilities. And so over the 20-year term, you are getting $6.1 million also in paying of interest. But if you look at the anticipated savings, again, assuming, general interest increases of just 3% on utility rate increases, you're anticipating about $11 million in savings over the 20 years in terms of savings on utilities with the utility bill. So it can pencil is what I'm saying. So you have that. Now, so there's different financing options. It can pencil. You would have to finance with these projects. So there is a debt requirement associated with this. But you do have the ability to basically offset it with your exchange of not paying the utility rates.
Kelly, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
'Cause- but Bob, there's three things listed here that say it covered 100%.
Yeah.
What's the drawback of the other two that are less? What I know I'm missing something there, but I'm not sure what it is.
There's no drawback. It's just with it, there's no drawback. It's just that it doesn't fully, if it's a net meter, it just means that those are on the site itself. And that just simply means that you're going to offset part of the utility bill, but you're still going to be paying.
100% doesn't mean that any of those projects covers the whole city for everything.
So the only thing that covers the city wholly is the consolidated project, right? So that takes all of your utility bills and identifies that you're building a project large
Okay,
enough
okay, I
to
get
offset it, right?
I get it.
The rest,
Those
yeah.
just covered those things.
The rest of these projects are on the individual sites and only covers the wastewater treatment plants project and the wastewater treatment plants bills.
I was missing that part.
Yeah.
Shocking. I
I maybe didn't explain that very well. So the Justice Center, this only covers the Justice Center's utility bill and meter, right? And so this is a project that's only large enough that will only be a behind the meter project for the Justice Center. And the site there is only large enough to offset 27% of the Justice Center's bill. And that's it. So I bring this table to you again as just these are options available to you. These are not the only options by any way, shape, or form. For example, for the wastewater treatment plant, again, with the net metering opportunity, you can only go up to 2 megawatts, right? So you can choose to do just a 2 megawatt project for the wastewater treatment plant and offset 3/4 of the bill for the wastewater treatment plant as a net metering project and still have just a small bill for the wastewater treatment plant if you just wanted to do a smaller project. But you have lots of different options is basically what I'm laying out for you. Other things to consider as part of this. There will be a small consideration for operating and maintenance costs. There will be some equipment replacements that you'll have to consider as the system ages. You will have some site maintenance to make sure that the area in between the solar panels does not get overgrown and cause for it to create, shading or anything like that. That will create a diminishment of the system efficiency. You'll also have to evaluate each of the sites, depending on which site you use, to ensure that there is appropriate grid interconnection system availability. If there is not, there may be a requirement for upgrades to Pacific Power's systems to be able to make sure that they have the systems necessary to allow for the size of the solar system that you want to put in.
You mean the batteries?
You're putting in a solar array that is going to inject energy into their system. And so it needs to have an inverter or, something that's large enough for it to be able to accept that power. And so it might need an upgrade to their system. And if it does, that's going to be an increased cost to the city to incur. And so you'll need to make sure that that pencils, basically, as part of the project. And that is a negotiation that will have to be had with Pacific Power. There is a technical feasibility study that will be able to be done with an engineer. That will be the next sort of step that you'll want to go through. to make sure that the wastewater treatment plant or any site that you do is going to be feasible for the size of the project that you want to move forward with. You also will, depending on which size of project you have to do, need to do a power purchase agreement with Pacific Power and evaluate the terms of the agreements. And then also, that term is only going to be for a length of period. Usually they're about 20 years. So then what also happens after those 20 years? And the city needs to be prepared for the renegotiation of what, the electricity bills are going to look like 20 years after that. And then also the costs that have been identified do not include battery storage and resiliency planning as part of these projects. As you can see, some of the costs were fairly extensive. And so when we were doing the evaluation, I identified how do you offset the costs, and the only way that you can offset the costs is when you're doing the power generation. And so we did not include that cost. There are grants out there for the resiliency planning, but they do not do a full offset of the cost. So that is something that will have to be considered and planned for at a future date. So again, different implementation pathways. You could consider doing the extremely large project, which could completely offset your, utility bills with Pacific Power. You could consider doing individual projects as just purely net metering projects, or, the larger project with the wastewater treatment plants. Or you can sort of do bite size, do one project, see how you feel, and phase it and do it based off of grant cycles, and see how the project management goes and your capacity is available. So you have lots of different options available to you. It can be based off of Ron's recommendation and the availability of staff, and world's your oyster, basically. So obviously, the next steps are sort of to compare, evaluate. We do not need or desire any specific answers from you today. I'm available to answer any questions that you might have. I do identify I am probably the most knowledgeable in the room, but by no means the expert on this still. And so I would identify that next steps, if council does identify this as a priority, would be to officially move forward with consultants to move this project forward and get the feasibility study done and get the project engineered appropriately. But the next step would be to have a discussion with this project for prioritization at the November goal setting session that you guys are going to have. And then, depending on which pathway you choose, if it is not doing one large consolidated project, then having a conversation about maybe doing a formalized solar policy about as you re-roof buildings, the grants that are available make solar extremely affordable to do solar on roofs as well. And so you would be able to offset your electricity costs at buildings as you re-roof, put solar on roofs as well. So consider doing a policy that would have a consideration to do solar on roofs as you do the re-roofs as well. So at that, this should look very familiar to you. The evaluation framework to get you all prepared for the goal setting sessions. So you have the strategic alignment. This was a conversation where we were to evaluate solar as an offset to offset costs and generate revenue. At our last conversation about solar, we did identify to just move forward with offsetting costs and not move forward with the community solar project. So we did get that direction. So this is the direction that we moved forward with, to just do the offsetting cost option. There is no regulatory driver for this. It only gets into regulatory drivers when you have the very large solar projects that are much larger than what we're talking about, where you get into the utility commission. In terms of capital costs, there are capital costs, absolutely. But you do have the financing options where, as long as you budget basically for the same utility costs that you already currently have, it's pretty much a zero-sum game at this point. And then you will pretty much see immediate savings as the utility bills continue to increase based off of inflation and rate increases. You will have that immediate savings as you have the implementation of the project. You also have a generalized, I guess, medium risk associated with this as utility rates increase. If we don't do the project, then the city needs to continue to budget for those utility increases. And then in terms of capacity, a lot of the names on this project list will continue to be the same. And I was supposed to update the slide. Instead of question marks, it was supposed to be a community development director. So, see that as community development director. That will be the future community development director. Yeah, you should fire me.
Is that still an option?
So you have that. And since this is our last work session of the summer, we thought that we would really quickly roll through the other evaluation frameworks that we made you guys go through for the summer as well, so that you guys can have a quick recap. So you also have the Champion Mill. Again, strategic alignment is part of the strategic plan. You do have capital costs that you should expect as part of this one as well. That will be anywhere from 1 to 10 million. And again, that is just as part of the brownfield cleanup costs. That does not include infrastructure costs. That does not include costs to put together the trail or the park or any of the development itself, or the transportation. So the 1 to 10 million is really just to get the site cleaned up and ready for future development. And again, risk is associated with, the continued degradation of the sites, continued use of police services to clean up the site, and then economic depression of value of the site, and then environmental and public health issues. And then again, look at the capacity, the same people pretty much, is the city manager, public works director, community development director, and then just for fun, adding in the development services supervisor to this one as well. For the wastewater treatment plant, again, there's strategic alignment. You have the upgrade to the wastewater treatment plant, which is what directly included in the strategic plan. There are lots of regulatory drivers associated with this. There is a significant capital cost associated with this one of $70 million. This will have a direct impact to the residents if we are not able to find grants to offset this cost. We're actively and continuously trying to find grants to offset this cost and work with our states and federal regulators to try to find offsets for it. But this will have that impact. There is a definite high risk associated with this if we do not have any action associated with it due to capacity overflows, potential fines from DEQ, and a potential moratorium on new connections if we do not have direct action. And again, the city manager, public works director, community development director are listed on this again, as well as the wastewater treatment plant manager, finance director, and IT staff as capacity for this project as well. And finally, the municipal jail was our first one into this work session. There is direct strategic alignment for this. It was in our strategic plan. There are no regulatory drivers on this. It is a policy choice whether or not to open the jail. However, if you do open the jail, it shall be in association with the CIS insurance policy and operating standards. And there are ORS standards associated with operation standards as well. There are no capital costs for the jail. However, it will create a $1.25 million annual operating cost. And then you also have to plan for escalating increases based off of salaries and benefit costs as well. In terms of risk, technically there are none. If you do nothing, you would just maintain the existing status quo of what we have been doing for the last couple of years. But if you do want to move forward with doing something, whether it's different funding options, how to address the reopening of the jail process, it would include the city manager, the police chief, police captain, police lieutenant, city attorney, judge, finance director, human resources director, and potentially a grant writer as well. So lots of capacity overlaps, lots of capital overlaps, and lots of strategic alignment for all of these. So I'm going to be done talking and answer any questions y'all might have.
Well, let me say this first off. Thank you. Is this your last meeting with us?
It is my last meeting
Okay.
with you.
So,
I don't accept that.
so I wanted to thank you for your service to the city, of course. You've done an awesome job whenever we needed information for direction or policy change, you're always there. So, and this presentation is an example of your hard work and your attention to detail. So I want to thank you. So
It was uncomfortable for you to say you instead of we while you were addressing us, though. You're supposed to still be we, but
Kelly, you've set a high bar. I don't know if we can be happy with someone else.
Thanks.
So first off, is there any questions on the solar aspect of her briefing?
I'd like to talk a little bit about that. Ken's been talking about this for a couple of years. I think it's a good idea. I know it's a good idea. I have a little bit of experience with solar. I put solar on my home. And everything that Kelly outlined is exactly how it turned out for me. For example, my light bill was $150 a month. That's what it averaged. So I financed my solar panels on a 12-year no interest plan. My payments are $150 a month, same as what my light bill was. If I did not put solar in years ago, my light bill would probably be about $300 a month right now. So there is a huge savings in exactly what Kelly was talking about. It's not only a long-term and smart investment, it's a short-term as well. Now, I haven't paid a light bill in 3 years, but my light bill would have been twice what it was back then by now with the rate increases that Pacific Power's had. So it just makes sense. Now, on the projects, we're talking about the overall cost of it. Can't we piecemeal this? Can't we start with a small project, finish that, and then start another one? Is that what you were talking about earlier? The step, call it the step plan, so that we don't have these millions and millions and millions of dollars of outlay all at once?
So you can. The reason why I identified like the consolidated project as one large project or the wastewater treatment plant as one large project, and you'll probably want to get this guy's opinion on the federal tax credit side of the equation. The federal tax credit is very tricky. It only identifies a one-time payment for a single project, right? So it won't allow you to get a payout per phase. So if you were to, on the wastewater treatment plant site, try to get a payout of the tax credit because you're doing 6 phases on the wastewater treatment plant, they may look at your property and go, well, you've already gotten the tax credit on phase 1, so we're not going to give you the tax credit for phases 2 through 6. And so that's a 30% tax credit. That is your largest grant opportunity. And so it's a cost benefit analysis of the funding that's available to you to offset costs. And so the answer is yes, you absolutely can. You just have to do an analysis of what you want to have the benefit for, the offset of your tax credit or the ability to do a phased approach.
I think the piecemeal, because the big number scares me. Like I saw the big number. Wow, I don't want to spend 16 million. I'd rather spend 8 million. But the
You're only spending 10.7.
I get it. The balance is doing it piecemeal. You get economies of scale if you have one person one time. It feels like you get one person that does it all. And piecemeal, you'd be starting and stopping. And I think if you did it in one big project, you'd be locked into now's economy, which I don't know if that's necessarily a great thing if it goes longer and you start putting pieces together, but at least it'd be an established cost. I think that I see the math to it. At some point, we're going to sell this to the people. I mean, it isn't something we just do, is it? Say, sorry, folks, you don't get a voice in this. There'd be meetings. There'd be people some people are going to, just like with Coffin Butte, some people are going to see something bad about this or something really good about this, and we'll have to hear them.
You have the ability to, let's say we took the wastewater plant and we decided to do something with the wastewater plant. If you had to ask me today, I would say net metering is the way to go and not the overall arching project. Just because we're not entering into a power purchase agreement with Pacific Power, we kind of control our own destiny. It doesn't offset the entire thing. It could offset the entire thing out at the water plant, but you could take the money that you pay in power cost today, which is about $330,000, and you could get a loan, and that would be your debt service. Use some capital. There's a mix and match of things you can do there. We're doing it internally. When I say internally, that the council approves, of course. So it's not really. This is a discussion that you have on policy based on how we want to run our operation. Really, is what I'm trying to say.
So the staff position is that we shouldn't do a giant project?
Well, and if I can add one more piece to this too, is depending on how you decide to move forward is going to impact then what you're going to be able to do in terms of either loan or bonding or something else, right? So if you're going to go out and try to sell a full faith and credit bond or a revenue bond, those generally need to be larger in size than, a bunch of little small projects, because otherwise you're not going to find investors that are going to purchase your bond or give you the money to then be repaid, right? So then you're going after a loan, and typically a bank loan, and typically bank loans are going to be less favorable in terms of interest rates for an organization such as ours. Size also matters in the form of tax exemption when it comes to bond sales. So you just have to be careful on understanding that the smaller you go, we can still do it, but you may pay more interest in the long
I'm just
run.
confused. I thought you were talking about you wanted to do the smaller. I got that net metering thing backwards.
No, net metering is a smaller project. Net metering, you can do a maximum of
Right.
2 megawatts.
Right. So that basically, what that does for you is then we're not trying to do a power purchase agreement. For one, we don't have $10 million, right, to give out to that. So I think that was used as more of an example to let you know, hey, here's what it'd be if we had to do the whole thing. But it also, when you start breaking it down, there are options out there. Now, could we get a loan for 10 and change and do it? Yeah, I'm sure we could. I'm just not sure that, for me, I'd like to see a smaller scale just to make sure that it is going to offset the power before you go throw all your chips into that basket. I'm risk adverse, I guess.
We've been talking about this for a while. So one of the city, our surrounding cities, city of Corvallis, they have it on their public works building. Do we have background on how it's done?
What do you mean how it's done?
Well, well, no, how it's done, how, has it benefited the public works in the city of Corvallis? Not that I look at other cities to come up with all our solutions, but we're not also going to reinvent the wheel either here, so.
They have it, they actually have on their website, like updated meter reading info on how their solar is being producing and how much it offsets. So it does, they have like real-time information of how much it offsets. So yeah,
Okay. And it's a positive?
it's a positive.
Okay. So do we know how they went along with the process?
We had them come over and we actually met with their person that did it. And I don't remember exactly how they started the process.
They
Things have
received
changed
grants.
since they've done
Yeah.
it too. It's been several years when they did that.
Yeah, and theirs are net meters, so they have it on several different sites. And they did it in a phased approach as different net meter projects. And so they had a project manager, where he was, pretty much full-time working on it for an extended period of time, as his job to do it, so.
Gosh, I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. I guess I'm not missing. So we could take a giant piece of property
Yeah.
and put a small net meter one, and then add another one at that same spot later, another one? Is that how it works?
No.
No, so
So you'd have to find small chunks all over the place to put them.
Well, in order to net meter, it has to be on the site. So if we were going to net meter at the water treatment plant, the solar field has to be at the water treatment plant. If we were going to net meter at the wastewater
I get it.
plant,
I get
it has to be at the wastewater plant.
Thank you.
Now, the big one that Kelly's talking about, the overall for the city, that's way too big for net metering, and we ended up being in a power purchase agreement with Pacific Power.
Pacific Power does not do what's called remote metering, where you can do a facility that then gives credit, like you can build a facility at the wastewater treatment plant, but that credits then the meter for the Justice Center, right? That's called remote metering.
I got
So we couldn't do something like that. The power purchase agreement basically says we're building a facility large enough that we're then selling the power that we're creating to Pacific Power. But then we're still getting bills from Pacific Power for each of our different meters. But it's enough that we're selling that we're then offsetting those bills, basically.
Okay.
But then to net meter it, you have to build it at each of the different sites. And that's why it's called a behind the meter, because it's as if it's, you're just feeding the meter like you're plugging it in.
So net metering is similar to what like Counselor McLean has in his home?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other one, I'm hesitant on the large piece just because, okay, when I think about this, I'm like, these large businesses that we have in town don't have solar, right? When I think, some of our large energy users
And tech needs more of these,
don't use that. And I have a feeling it's probably because that purchase or that agreement with Pacific Power isn't enough to benefit them. And it's not just like here. I can think of lots of industrial places across, Oregon that don't put in solar. But the net metering, I think, is great for that one-to-one to have that zero bill for that site.
Right. So there's a couple different reasons why. And definitely need to be cautious and go in with eyes wide open in conversations with the power purchase agreement with the Pacific Power. Absolutely. But the land availability for our industrial properties is very different, right? We have a dried out property with no wetlands, and we have land availability. Even with a solar project, you still have to do wetland mitigation, believe it or not, to be able to put a solar project on it. And so land availability is a big factor when you're putting in a ground mounted project as well. And so a lot of our industrial properties still have to look at, are you just doing a roof mounted project, right? Which they may have, but it's also, that's why we talked about the CPACE program as well. They're talking about a personal loan versus a tax assessment on property differential as well. And so there's lots of different factors other than just the power purchase agreement was what I'm getting at as well. But
Okay.
I would absolutely say eyes wide open in making sure that you are getting a valid, good deal on that if you do go
Don't
that
the-
route.
Don't the big industrial customers, don't they get a different rate than the average homeowner pays?
Yes, absolutely.
So there might be an offset. I know that Wachang built this power plant that was powered by natural gas, and they used it for a short while and then quit using it. They just went back to using PG&E or whoever it is they use. So I think that maybe the power company made a deal with them, hey, shut down your plant, we'll supply you electricity for this price.
Right.
Now, a couple things regarding what you had stated in your report here, that the solar panels had a peak usage of 4.5 hours a day. I've seen solar panels that rotate and follow the sun, and so I think that this might be a low ball on the 4.5 hours a day. And I know that on my solar panels, they start working when the sun comes up and they work till the sun goes down, and that's winter and summer both. So, they make this big clicking sound when they come on, when it starts using the solar panels. And that starts as soon as the sun's up.
So that's why it says peak, right? It's that 4.5 is when it's the most energy production, which is when you're having to, that's their calculation basis.
You're talking about efficiency.
Yeah. You do your efficiency ratings basis and how many solar panels you need and how big of a production you need and the size of your facility based off of the peak production, not the total calculation, right?
Well, on my house, I did the overkill thing.
Yeah.
They come out and they calculate, well, you're using, this much power, so you're gonna need this many panels.
Right.
And I said, well, wait a minute. My mother-in-law's gonna move in with me, and she takes 3 showers a day. So they upped, the amount of solar panels that I was allowed to get.
Right.
And that just completely wiped out, my power bill. Now, yes, I might be paying in more to Pacific Power than they're giving me, but my net reasoning was I want to eliminate my power bill, and that I did. Now, if I give Pacific Power a little bit of power from my solar panels, more than what they give me, that's fine. I'm okay with that.
Right.
But the bottom line was it eliminated my power bill.
Right. And then in terms of the rotating panels, yes, there is the potential ability to become even more efficient and get more power out of it, but those take more land area. And so depending on the type of project you have, we may not have the land area to accommodate that to do a 100% offset, depending on the project that you choose. So you do have the availability to do that. You have lots of different options. You
So it
just have
makes
to.
the piecemealing, to me, it makes the piecemealing of this, makes more sense. It's okay, I don't know how cold this water is. I'm just gonna stick my toe in it.
Yeah.
And find out before I, jump in.
And that's where I think your guys' next step may be to, actually hire an engineer to talk to them about this and figure out where your appropriate best use of land and capital would be.
I would just like to say, from the inception of this idea till right now, our perception of the industry and the understanding of it has changed dramatically every time. It's just a constant cycle. Every day we learn something new. And it's like, whoa. So I'm in agreement with what you just said, the piecemeal, aspect of it, because it is a changing, emerging market. Even though it's been around for a while, it's still changing and emerging. And, the bottom line is it's not our money. It's the public's money. So we have to take that in consideration. So the, trying it at the Justice Center or something like that initially and seeing how it works and then build off of that, I think would have more traction than trying to do a $16 million project and then having it. I'll say it, and they'll probably hate me for saying this, but let me step back for a second and say this. The reason why I started talking about this with Ron and Kelly, was this. We have unused assets, city level, okay, that property out there at wastewater, okay? How do we maximize that? How do we get value out of that? Than it just sitting there and we just do maintenance on it. Two, how do we offset some of our expenditures, okay? And show that we're actually really trying to save money wherever we can for the public, okay? And what was also outside the box thinking, okay? Let's look at some of these new technologies and see if they're beneficial to the city of Lebanon. That's how it kind of started. And then, like I said, it went through that cycle of, oh, we can do this, and then later, no, we can't do that, but we can do this over here, and our concept of it changed over time. I believe it can bring benefit to the city. We just have to make sure that we're picking the right solution, that we're not just running into it blindly. And that's why it's taken so long to get to this point, is to make sure, because we found, and I'll just say it, we found that there's a lot of people in the industry that are, lack of a better word, flaky. Okay, so it raises our ears, and guys, it goes, whoa, wait a second here. So that was one thing. And also, let's be honest, and this is the part that I said, I know there's going to be some people, since this is on public record, they'll probably hate me for saying this, but I'm going to say it. I would not want to go full bore into this, $16 million, and have it turned into another project like over in Albany for the intermodal train service. Okay, spending 25 million, 30 million, and it's empty. I don't want that, because it wasn't a responsible use of public money. So I think we can find benefit. Everything I heard through our meetings with the city of Corvallis and their public works, it's been great. Now, I don't know if you looked it up on your computer. And what did it show?
Yeah, it looks like, I have to pull it back up. It's still loading. Saved 95,000 since it started for the city. And that was in, I think, 2014, if this is the right website. Sorry, that's just at the airport. Their public work one is different. Let me click that one.
So that's just one location.
That's one location. I can open it's
Oh,
opening.
wow. Who just brought that up?
Oh yeah, that's what I'm looking, that's the day, 3-day. I click the all, and then that's the 9 at the bottom left. There you go. It's like 90 some, there it is.
And our mindset in a lot of meetings is can we do it and offset the cost through savings?
Absolutely.
So if we're able to do that, and we're not attaching more requirements on the ratepayers, taxpayers out there, why wouldn't we consider it?
These are the small projects,
The
right?
small projects,
Those are
yeah.
Yes, these are the ones I think that are beneficial.
Those are the net meters. Now, I
Yes.
know the bigger projects, if I remember one of the meetings correctly, they have to be within 3 miles of a substation. So that was where that extra infrastructure comes into play. If we wanted to build it at, say, I don't know, Champion Mill Pond. This is not what we're doing, but say we're going to do that, we would have to put the infrastructure in there to support that.
Right.
Okay. Which, no, everybody out there online, that's not what we're doing. So it's very interesting, but I would be totally for trying like the Justice Center or a smaller project and seeing how it works and kind of getting the feel of it. And I know that during that process, we'd learn even more about implementing these type of measures. So is there any other comments,
Yeah,
questions?
on those lines, I think that, I think we're in the right direction. I think that planning ahead beats the heck out of waiting until something happens and we're forced to do it. Let's do it now. Let's start the process now so that we have more control and we can plan instead of waiting for it to slap us in the face.
And the other aspect we all have to remember is government changes constantly. It's changed since I've been in office. And when it comes to cities finding ways to be productive and retain value and be a little bit more self-sufficient, okay, not relying on other organizations or other levels of government to support us. So this is one of those aspects how I think pitting it, control is a weird word, but putting that control in our hands a little bit where we can be self-determining on these type of things. So that's my 2 cents. Yeah, I think everybody can probably infer where I'm coming from
Well, with
and
my
what I
2 cents,
support.
we got 4 cents now.
Yeah, we have 4
I'll throw in
cents.
a penny because
So
that's
we
all,
just need-
that's all the cents I have.
15,999. No, no.
No, this is a good conversation. Thanks. I appreciate it. I have a little better grasp on it, at least for today.
Is there any other questions or comments for Kelly or staff? All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you
Thanks,
for your
Kelly. All the
service.
best to
I
you.
know we'll talk some more. And thank you. And thanks, Ron. And Chief, thank you. Even though you were right on
Kelly,
time.
what is your last day in the office?
Wednesday of next week.
Wow,
Coming up fast.
yeah.
Winding down.
Yep.
All right. If there's no other comments or questions, I'm going to adjourn this meeting.